Bosia, Ekuko Bosia, Susu account, and it does all her savings account, me bada chain savings account, and then the Keka home. Suhum Rural Bank was 034229186. Now one so what to me say.
Suhum Rural Bank, ama ene mayeka una.
Suhum Rural Bank, entime pa minie.
Suhum Rural Bank, growing our heritage.
Welcome to AutoCheck Vehicle Diagnostic and Licensing Center.
I hear my car can be checked here without going to so many or Accra.
Sure.
Check, auto checks, check, auto checks, check.
Emission, check.
Check, auto checks.
Alignment, check.
Auto checks, check, auto checks.
Brakes, check. Visit AutoChecks at Koforidua Aquadum Road for the roadworthiness of your vehicle, from saloon cars to heavy-duty industrial vehicles. Madam, your car is now ready for the road.
Thank you so much.
Auto checks.
Auto checks, check.
AutoChecks, your safety, our priority.
Check, auto checks.
Hello, good evening, and thanks again for joining us on Ideas Exchange here on TV XYZ. We bring this program to you on Wednesdays from 8 to 9 p.m. Tonight, we will bring you the conversation from the office of the First Deputy Speaker of Parliament. Remember last week our focus was on proceedings in the House because of the polarization. This was different from the public expectations on the eve of January 6, 2021. Because many would have thought that a hung parliament would see consensus building. That appears not to be happening. And even as we speak, the controversy seems to be deepening by the day. And so today we want to engage the First Deputy Speaker of Parliament, who is also the Member of Parliament for Bekwai and has been in Parliament for 3 consecutive terms. He has so much experience both as a lawyer and also playing key roles on some committees of Parliament. We know that he has been chair of the Appointments Committee of Parliament before. He's also served on the Standard Orders Committee of Parliament. He's also been a member of the Transport Committee of Parliament and a former chief executive of the DVLA. Good evening, sir, and thanks for the privilege on TV XYZ.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity
to
speak to the public.
3 terms as a member of Parliament for Bekwai, and in this particular period when you are a First Deputy Speaker, how do you compare your role as an ordinary member of Parliament some years back and today with this huge cloak around your shoulders?
Well, I must confess that there's a huge difference. When I was an ordinary member of Parliament, I had a lot of time on my hand. I could visit my constituency all year round. I have 116 towns and villages forming Bekwai constituency. So I broke them into 3. Anytime Parliament was on recess, I went round one set, went round the other set, and went round. And even usually, when I go on weekend, I will spend the whole Monday afternoon receiving community members coming to talk about community issues and personal issues. But now I can't afford that anymore. In the last Parliament, that was my biggest challenge, that I was no longer the available MP. They knew me. I was always available. They could reach me anywhere, anyhow. Now when I'm presiding, I can't even answer their calls. So the challenge is massive.
Now, so what is influencing this challenge? Because many would have thought that, yes, you are a member of Parliament and you have a privilege to be serving today as the First Deputy Speaker. So what is really the striking difference that puts so much load on you compared to the past?
Because your time is no longer in your control. Even though you don't sit every minute of the day, Professor Michael Quay used to say that if I look up and you're not there, it doesn't give me confidence, because should anything happen to me, nobody will take the seat. So I made it a policy to be always present when another person sit. If the speaker is presiding, I'm sitting and ready, available. So he knows that. So that gave me the responsibility of abandoning everything else and making sure that parliamentary work proceeded. And if you recall, the 7th Parliament, we passed the highest. We used to work long hours, and for about 80% of them, I was in the chair. The demand on my time was a lot more than when I was an ordinary member of Parliament. You're needed for a decision. In these times, though, to be absent itself is a challenge, because any one of you who is absent, your side may lose a vote, may lose a critical decision.
So that makes it a bit more critical. But you have been in Parliament for 14 years. You are a lawyer and understands the standing orders or the rules or privileges that come with some positions, either as a Speaker or Deputy Speaker, or even as a chair of any of the committees of Parliament. How unique is the role, or what privileges come with the office of the Speaker or the Deputy Speaker of Parliament?
As the leadership, we call the group leadership, Mr. Speaker is the head, the deputy speakers, and the majority and minority leaders up to the deputy whips, we call us leadership. There's always some additional support given to us because we take on additional responsibility. For example, when projects are allocated, you're giving a first option. If it is less than the number, you'll be giving the first option. And then a lot of the time, because you are hardly able to go to your constituency, when allocations are made to the constituencies, the leadership are giving extra so that your constituents will not feel your absence too much. So these are some. And then, for example, because I'm a leader, I have official vehicles, I have official driver, I have an usher, people who do some of the errands that I used to do myself. Before I became a deputy speaker, I drove myself. But now I have official driver and I have official vehicles. My own vehicle then is used only for my private matters. But anytime I'm doing official work, I use official vehicle. That's some of the responsibilities.
Okay, so now let's move on to the issue that may have driven us to walk to your office, and happily you've opened up to speak to us. Now, we have known this e-levy conversation to have triggered a lot of issues. Many people would have thought would have gone for granted or unnoticed in Parliament. Last week, when the Supreme Court ruled on whether you can vote even when presiding or otherwise, you responded. And we've seen other related responses which are either supporting your view or contrary. Now, from where you sit and speaking to the same issue, having listened to many views, what is your own appreciation of that ruling vis-a-vis Parliament having its own rules and playing its own games? If you can walk us that line.
Okay. First thing is that what Supreme Court ruled affirms the position I took. Reading the Constitution, reading the standing orders, I was of the firm opinion that when you're counting members of Parliament in the chamber for the purpose of quorum, a deputy speaker, whether presiding or not, in the chamber must be counted, because first and foremost, he is a member of Parliament. If you take any of our votes and proceedings now and you open into it, for example, the whole of last week, I was the only speaker available. I was presiding. You see there Joe Seusu, first deputy speaker, presiding. My name is there. Then you go to members present. You find also there, number 145 or so, Joe Seusu present. So, notwithstanding that I was a presiding deputy speaker, I was also recorded as a member present. So that position is what I took, and I'm glad that the Supreme Court affirmed that. For me, it was truly not necessary. There was no need to have any controversy about that. Now, my view is that we appear to have this controversy because we've never had this situation. A situation where a deputy speaker's vote is necessary and critical for the majority side in taking a decision if the minority does not support it. The practice, as people have said, is that indeed, if you go through our records, from my own experience, that about 90% of all decisions in the House are taken by consensus. There are only about 5–10% that we don't agree. When we don't agree, the principle has always been where the majority is, the majority carries the vote. Now this time, the majority is only +1. And then 2 of the majority side are deputy speakers, the majority caucus. The 2 of them are deputy speakers.
Now, if you say the majority caucus, 2 of them are the deputy speakers, are you not only being a little unfactual, especially by the fact that the other deputy speaker is an independent candidate?
That's why I used caucus. A caucus is a conglomeration of different parties, and that's how we sit in Parliament. We don't sit by parties, we sit by caucuses. So the minority caucus, when I joined Parliament, I was independent, but I joined the minority caucus. So anytime the majority caucus was doing it, I was part of it. There were some other independent members who joined the majority caucus, and then other parties, for example, PNC in 2009 joined the majority caucus. CPP said he will sit with the minority caucus, but he will vote on their own. So in Parliament, you either sit on the right or the left. The right is always the majority caucus. The left is the minority caucus. So even though we have different parties, you come together, we call a caucus. That's why I was choosing my words carefully. So the majority caucus, which is made up of 137 NPP MPs and 1 independent MP, 2 from this caucus are the deputy speakers.
Now, it is interesting that we are getting this explanation, but it still raises other issues that many might want to consider are still very controversial, because I'm sure you have seen your own self in a viral tape in which you were presiding and made comments about whether you had the right to vote or otherwise. And in that commentary, you were very clear, and I'm sure that Hansard has captured it, where you categorically said, you know that as a presiding officer in the House, you did not vote. How do you compare that to this controversy about whether you were stepping out to go to the urinal or you were going out to vote, which ended up in the brawl? How do you marry the 2 controversies all coming from you?
I don't see any controversy. What is going around is a reading of the standing orders. Order 1093. A deputy speaker or any other member presiding shall not retain his original vote while presiding. That is what I read there. That whilst on the seat, you do not retain your original vote.
What does it mean for me who doesn't understand the standing orders of Parliament?
Okay. What he's saying is that if you're a deputy speaker, you're a member of Parliament, but anytime you are presiding, then your original vote, which every member has, you lose that one. So at that point, my argument was that that loss is only during the period I am in the chair. And that if need be, and I'm sure if we're reviewing the tapes I've spoken to, I'd always insisted that if need be, I will leave the seat to go and vote. So, because as soon as I leave the seat, my vote is restored. But today, the Supreme Court has ruled that this 1093 is unconstitutional, because that laws of vote is not in the Constitution. The Constitution only says that the Right Honourable Speaker shall not have either original or casting vote. My own view, and indeed, we had a long argument within our caucus. I was urged to rule that the natural consequence of not having your original vote whilst presiding is that you have a casting vote. But I was careful that, listen, I agree that that should be the natural consequence, but I am not the speaker. If the speaker made that pronouncement, it will bring the matter to
Now, I've listened to members on the other side, the minority leader, for example, raising a scenario where there will be a voice vote. If you are presiding as a first deputy speaker or deputy speaker of parliament, and there is supposed to be a voice vote, would you add your voice to either nay or yes?
No,
Why?
because it's not necessary.
And if it is not necessary, how relevant is it for you to go and cast your vote if that controversy should arise?
Okay, so let's move on from here. Now, 103 is a standing order. The Constitution has its own prescription. The Constitution says the Speaker shall have neither the original vote nor casting vote. It doesn't say anything about the deputy speakers. Then Parliament, in its own regulation, adds that a deputy speaker shall have no original vote whilst presiding. Now, this is challenged. The Supreme Court says that under Article 1101, your power to regulate yourself is subject to the Constitution. So if the Constitution has not taken away the power of a deputy speaker presiding to vote, Parliament has no right to make a rule taking away that power. And so that particular sub-rule order is
Set aside.
unconstitutional.
Okay, no,
So
staying with that, sorry to have cut in, but I'm still coming back to the same subject. Now, if this is the scenario today, let me ask, can Parliament make its own rules? And if
Yes.
Parliament can make its own rules, can the Supreme Court intervene by setting aside Parliament's own rules? That is where this controversy about whether it is interfering as an arm of government in the proceedings of the House.
let's just speak to the Constitution so that we don't use our own interpretations. Order 1101, subject to the provisions of this Constitution. It starts with subject. Parliament may, by standing orders, regulate its own procedure. So it says, I have given you the power to regulate your procedure subject to this Constitution. So you're entitled to do anything as long as it does not conflict with the powers contained in this Constitution. So Parliament's power to make its own regulations is constrained by the Constitution. And indeed, in this House, there have been CIs, LIs that the Supreme Court has says is unconstitutional.
Is this position today, which appears to fall in line with your reasoning at the time you were taking decisions as a presiding officer in the House, not contradicting the Supreme Court's own actions in the past? And I'm making reference to a statement by Professor Kweku Asare, and he's making reference to Justice Sowa. And I want to read that statement. It says, in the oft-cited but hardly understood Tufo case, when he says that the law and custom of Parliament is a distinct body of law and, as a constitutional experts do put it, unknown to the courts, and therefore the courts take judicial notice of what has happened in Parliament. The courts do not and cannot inquire into how Parliament went about its business. Again, and it concludes with the last paragraph in that presentation he made. It says, overruling the standing order that requires the Speaker pro tempore to act as an unbiased umpire with no vote makes a mockery of Tufo and could be very well be a Pyrrhic victory of style over substance.
But
These
I
are
think
legal terms. What does it mean to you?
In the Tufo and Attorney General, the Supreme Court actually overruled what Parliament had done as unconstitutional. So I'm surprised that he picks only a portion which does not deal with this specific matter. Parliament has the power to do anything as long as it does not contravene the Constitution. So that body of rules, that how you manage your own affairs, we will not interfere. Indeed, that is the word here. Only subject to the provisions of the Constitution. Parliament may, by standing on this, regulate its own procedure.
So some would also say you are also referring to an aspect of the Constitution, and that is what makes it comfortable for you, because I've seen others
there's no
make
other
reference.
part of the Constitution which is different,
No.
which gives anybody, any organ of
I'm
the
not
state.
a lawyer, and this conversation is not supposed to pitch you against any of the actors involved or interested parties in this case. But with all due respect, I want to read some aspects of the speaker's long presentation when he came back from Dubai, and he makes reference to Order 13, Order 13.1, Order 13.2, and then he wraps up with his conclusion. For example, he says under Order 13.1, any of the deputy speakers may be asked to take the chair whenever the speaker so requests due to his temporary absence from the chamber. The deputy speaker presides until such a time that the speaker is able to resume the chair, and it goes on and on. Then he goes to Order 13.2, which presents a different situation according to the presentation. Under this order, the speaker's unavoidable absence from the presence of Parliament means the first deputy speaker assumes authority of the speaker and performs all the duties of the speaker in relation to the chamber, and it goes on and on. I'm sure you are privy to that. And then he concludes that in this sense, therefore, the first deputy speaker for the period of any unavoidable absence from Parliament was the acting Speaker of Parliament, and thus all rules and limitations apply to him in a manner that applies to the substantive Speaker of Parliament. At that time, he spoke and drew conclusions which sought to indict your integrity.
Between the two of us,
if you look at this presentation, is he not quoting something from
I'll read
governs
the standing orders?
The standing orders.
I'll read it for you.
Right.
His interpretation of it, and between us, I'll tell you, we have agreed that we don't agree on his interpretation. I told him, Mr. Speaker, I don't agree with you on this one in his presence. So I'm not shy to talk about it in public because he knows my views on that. And let's go to Order 13.1. It says temporary or continued absence of Mr. Speaker. 13.1, either of the deputy speakers shall take the chair as a deputy speaker whenever requested to do so by Mr. Speaker during a sitting of the House. And note the word as a deputy speaker. Then come to 13.2. Whenever the House is informed by the clerk at the table of the unavoidable absence of the Speaker, the first deputy speaker shall perform the duties and exercise the authority of the Speaker. And you're still the first deputy speaker, exercising the powers and duties of the Speaker. It never makes you the acting Speaker. It never changed your name to acting Speaker. It never gives you anything beyond. And what are the powers and authorities?
Are we not playing with semantics? Because,
I think,
for
it's
example, in the
misinterpreted.
absence of the Speaker, who we know is in Dubai attending to his health, the assumption is that the first deputy speaker is acting.
I'm not acting Speaker. I've made that point clear again.
The leader of the House as a whole.
No. And I'll make it clear here. Now, Mr. Speaker is out of the country. He is still the administrator. He's giving instructions. He's working directly with the clerk. I don't perform any of his duties as the administrator. My duty is to preside over the House on matters that come into the House. I think you read last week that he's still admitting motions from Dubai and forwarding them.
I read that from the presentation made by the majority leader of the House.
That's right. He's approving memos. He's directing, indeed. I went to deliver a program. The clerk briefed me what matters has come. He has informed him, give him directions what to do. If I were the acting Speaker, I would be the one doing those things. Okay? But I'm very careful. When it comes to administration, I'll not touch anything he does not instruct me to do.
But he didn't instruct you to overturn some of his
because that's not
decisions.
administrative. That is not administrative. It is legislative. And it was not his decision. I think we should keep making that point. It was the decision of Parliament. The Speaker makes rulings, but decisions are made by the House. If the House...
supervision?
Oh, either the Speaker himself is presiding, a Deputy Speaker is presiding, or a member. Any four of us, at any point that we preside, we each exercise the same powers, have the same authority in the chamber, because it's like a presiding officer.
The reason why I appear to be spending a little more time on this controversy, which is out there, that must be clarified, at least from your office, as somebody who is directly part of the controversy that is ensuing, is the fact that if Parliament should take a decision under the leadership of the Speaker of the House, the presumption with that finality has been brought to it. But the seeming power play or the ambiguity arises when, in this case, he creates the impression that he has done something you have undone.
Well, I don't think it is he who is creating the impression. It's you who are reporting, who are creating the impression. The point is always clear. How did it come about? The majority leader look at the proceedings, and it says, from the report that is put before the House, the vote that was taken, ayes 137, noes 0, abstention 0. It means that all the number of persons in the chamber at the time you took the decision was 137, as it is the record before us. And we have gone through the process. Nobody has amended this record. It means that the number of people who took that decision did not meet what the Constitution required you to have. It has nothing to do with Mr. Speaker's decision.
And how different is it from the day when the majority walked out of Parliament and the House so went ahead?
That's the same thing I'm talking about. Right. So the number of persons that remained in the House, the number of members of Parliament that remained in the chamber were 137.
So educate me here. When does Parliament form quorum for any business? Is it at the beginning of sitting, in the middle, or whenever there's a controversy and they start all over again?
Any time. First is that quorum, as provided here, is that when to do a quorum of Parliament, that's 102. A quorum of Parliament, apart from the person presiding, shall be 1/3 of all members. So to transact what we call private business. What do we call private business? A member asks a question. The minister comes to answer the question. It does not involve taking any decision. A member makes a statement. Other people contribute. It does not involve any decision. So anytime you have 1/3, excluding the person presiding, you can transact that business. Last week, I've had on 2 occasions, members raise quorum. The reason is that the number that is present in the House does not amount to the number you need to do business. In the first instance, I truncated the proceedings. In the second instance, I deliberately overlooked and made the minister answer the questions, because as later I explained, it is for the benefit of the members. But if it were a government business, then I would have truncated the proceedings, right? But when it comes to decision taking, 104, and it provides us separately, voting in Parliament. It's different from quorum in Parliament. So at the beginning, if you have in addition to the person presiding 1/3 members, you can do all the private business. Even government business, you can do all the debate, but you can't put the question. And it is a known practice. When there's a challenge, you said, let's defer the decision. If we don't have the sufficient numbers to take the decision, we will do, sometimes we conclude the debate and leave the decision for another day until we have the correct number to take a decision. The correct number is here, 104. Except as otherwise provided in this Constitution. 1, Matters in Parliament shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of all members of Parliament present. All members of Parliament. How many members do we have? 275. Half is 137 is a little less than half. So you go to 138. That is what is our guiding principle. Anytime we have to take a decision, this is the quorum. So this matter was decided upon.
I understand clearly, but sir, you would realize that this conversation about whether there's a tie in Parliament and either the minority would have won the vote, how does it arise?
Okay.
Especially with this
it comes in here.
where we are.
It comes in here. I read 104.1.
Right.
Then 104.2 says the Speaker shall have neither an original nor casting vote. It doesn't talk about deputy speakers. 3, where the votes on any motion are equal, it shall be taken as lost. So whoever moved the motion can be other side. Sometimes the minority will file a motion, and once the motion is moved, and after voting you count and it is equal, then
whoever filed would have lost. Okay,
yes.
so sir, let me move on to this area. Brad Simmons, I'm sure you know him very well, of Imani Africa.
I've heard
He
of
has
him, I don't know him.
and he says that he has looked at the standing orders and constitutions of about 40 countries, and most of them have it that speakers, deputy speakers, MPs, for example, who are also MPs, don't vote. A few countries in the West, UK, for example, and I'm sure in the US, if my memory serves me right, have it the other way around, which we are witnessing today. Some have said that the vote of the presiding speaker, first or second, does not really matter in this case, because the impression has been created that you are representing your constituents and therefore it is key. But the reality is that your decisions and your actions on the floor do not really reflect the constituents. So it is a matter of convenience where you are taking advantage of
I don't
by the
understand.
Supreme Court.
I don't understand what it means by it does not reflect your constituents. I don't know what he means by that. But whenever you are in a representative capacity, your voice represents a group which sends you. For example, if you're in a board, and a board, as a constitution of the board, a group elects you. Whenever you speak, you're purported, you're believed or taken to have spoken on behalf of the group. Now, democracy, if you look back, they say it started like a community setting. Then the numbers grew, so we elect representatives. Now, if I say or do anything which my constituents don't support me, they'll call me back. Or when I go back, they'll challenge me, right? But whatever I say on behalf of the people who elected me to come and say here.
You believe that whether your colleague is individual, but every other individual MP, regardless of the reality that you don't consult us and you take your decisions and do your votings, we will take you and hold you responsible. But that's not the reality on the ground.
The reality on the ground is that there's no constituency which are 100% voting for one side. The highest I know is about 90% plus, right? So you, in every constituency, on any matter, you have divergent views. But you are the one who is appointed or elected to speak for the constituency. Sometimes you go back and they come back and tell you, no, we don't agree with this, we don't agree with that. Often, from my experience, they are hardly interested in what goes on in Parliament. All they're interested in, I recall my experience, I was going around discussing, visiting the communities and discussing the property rights of spouses. You take your time, you explain everything. As soon as you finish, the first person asks about their public toilet. The next person asks about their school building. They are hardly interested in. So you speak for them, believing that what you speak represents the position. And frankly, we must say it. We contest on the tickets of parties. So often, the party's manifesto, which has been sold to them, which they voted for, is the basis on which you have to say that This group believes in this philosophy, and it is based on that philosophy. But talking about what happens in countries, we have different systems in this world. Ghana practices the Commonwealth system. Today is Commonwealth Day. I read the Queen's speech at 12 noon. In the Commonwealth, there are very few countries which doesn't have the speakers who are members of parliament. For all those speakers who are members of parliament, they vote. All deputy speakers who are members of parliament, they vote, and it is provided for the Constitution.
My guest tonight is the first deputy speaker of parliament, Joe Osei Owusu, who is also the MP for Bekwai. The conversation is about him, but most especially what is of interest to you, our constitution, parliament as a body, the legislature, to be very simplified in terms of the narratives we have here. And then we're also looking at other actions that may have consequential actions on what happens, either in the House or even the executive as a body, and even by extension, the judiciary, which has been brought into this controversy. We'll be taking a short break. When we come back, we'll look at the possibility of the lawyer who went to court to go back to the appeals court for a review. We'd also look at the possibility of the House reviewing its own standing orders to make it such that, as Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh put it, perhaps Parliament in future may have to consider electing a first and deputy speaker, second deputy speakers of Parliament, who are not members of Parliament to seal this controversy. And then we'll also look at other few things that have come up as far as Joe Osei Owusu, Joe Wise, is concerned. I'll be back.
The average human body mass should have at least 60% water for optimal performance in any physical or mental exercise. We can help you maintain it naturally. X Natural Mineral Water. Simply natural.
Ifo kura na menye sika. Edia ye mefui.
Ehin fa pa na menya bosia. Edia tre medwuma yimu.
Kai kra mabre mi yebusia ato taxi foforo. Suhum Rural Bank.
Suhum Rural Bank.
Yemamu akwa baba Suhum Rural Bank. Ye won hyehyɛ ahodo bi te sɛ dwadifo abosia, ekuokuo abosia, susu account, and it does all savings account. Me bada chain savings account, and the keka ho. Suhum Rural Bank was 034229186. Now one so what to me aka say.
Suhum Rural Bank. Ama ene mayeka una.
Suhum Rural Bank. Enti me pa minie.
Me damwase.
Suhum Rural Bank, growing our heritage.
Welcome to AutoCheck Vehicle Diagnostic and Licensing Center.
I hear my car can be checked here without going to so many or Accra.
Sure.
Check, 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 auto checks. Check, 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 auto checks. Check, check.
Emission, check.
Check, 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 auto checks.
Alignment, check.
Auto checks. Check, 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 auto checks.
Brakes, check. Visit AutoChecks at Koforidua Aquadrum Road for the roadworthiness of your vehicle. from saloon cars to heavy-duty industrial vehicles. Madam, your car is now ready for the road.
Thank you so much.
Auto checks.
Auto checks. Check.
Auto Checks. Your safety, our priority.
Check. Auto checks.
Welcome back. This is TVXYZ. The program is Ideas Exchange. Tonight, our guest is the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Joe Osei Owusu. Our conversation is about some controversies that many think may be an albatross on the neck of MPs and, of course, most especially this country in general, if we don't really sit down and frankly tackle them or hold them by the horn. One has to do with the Supreme Court's ruling. I want to read an aspect of the ruling some say, or the minority leader suggested, that was a ruling in favor of the e-levy. One clause says that, therefore, to cause a member to forfeit their vote in Parliament merely on account of having to preside over the business of the House in the Speaker's absence would unfairly disenfranchise not only the presiding member, but also their constituents. Such an interpretation would likely give rise to certain perverse outcomes and or incentives. For example, it could lead to opportunistic absences by the Speaker or one of the other deputy speakers, as an absence would mean a vote loss by the presiding member and their party. In particular, as Article 96(1)(b) of the Constitution requires that the first and deputy speakers of Parliament come from different political parties, an interpretation that deprives the presiding deputy speaker of the vote could give the rival party an unfair advantage in a sharply divided vote. Many people have criticized this aspect of the ruling. Your opinion? And I want to ask this carefully because the follow-up question would be related.
Well, I've heard emotional criticisms. I'm trying to find out what legal criticism there is. Now, this is the exact situation we are in today. Why did the gentleman go to court? Because he said that I got myself counted as members present to form the quorum. That is correct. If I was not there, there would be no quorum. So why shouldn't I be counted? And the reason I am needed today is that the House is almost divided right in between. So every vote counts. I was the Deputy Speaker in the 7th Parliament. At no point was it necessary for me to insist on my right to vote or for me to be counted, because I was not required. The majority side, which I was part of, had a huge majority. They didn't need me. But today they need me at every moment. And therefore, why should I lose my vote only because the Constitution requires one from the minority and one from the other to be a deputy speaker? And I was nominated and I was elected.
So
why?
Clearly, the reason why I asked this question was to bring in this controversy about Saul. Your passion is to represent the interests of your constituents. The Electoral Commission clearly disenfranchised the people of Saul that we know today, because if you look at the 6th December letter, the paragraph 2 was clear that, however, as a result of the creation of the Guan district, and you have been a local government minister before, sorry, you have
been an assemblyman before.
Assemblyman before, yes, assemblyman before. Guan district local government, that's a Guan district assembly, establishment instrument, that's 2020, and pending the creation of the Guan constituency, eligible voters in the Guan district will vote only in a presidential election, but not parliamentary. As we speak, the Guan district is there. We don't have representation there. How do you feel, taking into consideration the concern any MP would have for constituents and others who may not even have at all?
So in which constituency did the Saul people vote in the presidential? They voted in the Buem constituency. the Buem constituency still exists.
So
there's an MP for Buem.
So you are...
My argument is that.
No, wait. So you are concluding by this response that the Electoral Commission deliberately deprived the people of their right to vote.
That's your interpretation. Please don't put those in my words. What I'm saying is
they were going to create Guan constituency.
Yes.
Now they issued this letter on the eve of the December 2020 elections.
At that time, they had actually brought the CI to Parliament, but because of the length of time left, the CI did not mature before the Parliament was dissolved. They had actually brought the CI.
Is it not an argument of convenience? Because the Attorney General...
Which one is the convenience? Excuse me, which one is the convenience? That the CI was not brought?
The electoral body that must see to the representation of any group of people is saying that we are going to create, how do you call it, Guan constituency. Today, the executive, through the AG, is saying they must annul the Buem elections and let them join Buem and vote in a parliamentary election.
That was a suggestion he made. Because the situation we have in now is that even if you create the Buem constituency now, if it is matured now, it cannot participate in the 2024 elections. That is the law.
Can you educate us?
The law is that any constituency that is created in the life of one parliament can only take election after that. I think I wish I could quote that. Yes, I wish I could quote the provision properly. I mean, I need to take my time and look at it. So there's a real life situation, but I don't think it is fair to suggest that the people in Seoul have no representation, because as we speak now, where they are is part of the Buem constituency, even though it is intended to carve them out. How? Because the Attorney General explained that he advised that if you lay the paper now, it will not mature before Parliament's term ends. So how they voted in the Buem constituency for the presidential, but did not vote for the MP at Buem, that for me is a little controversial. But you see, these matters are emotional matters, so I don't want to dabble in them. But the critical thing is that if you look at the constituencies as they exist, the people in the Seoul area belong to the Buem constituency. They actually voted in the Buem constituency for a presidential candidate. But because it was intended that they will be carved out of that area and made independent, they had hoped that they'll be able to do that.
So it had nothing to do with Hohoi seat, for example?
At all.
Okay, now let's look at the way forward. What do you envisage Parliament to be, looking at proceedings, looking at the posturing of the Speaker's reaction to the Supreme Court ruling, the minority saying perhaps they may have to sit in a house without any recognition of either the office of a first Deputy Speaker or the second Deputy Speaker?
So these are, I said, emotional outbursts. It's a pity that, indeed, pressmen are repeating these ones. I must tell you frankly, our loyalty should be to the Constitution. The Constitution defines how to deal with a case if you lose it. The Constitution says that at the end of it, it's final, and everybody is obliged to obey it. So to repeat the emotional outbursts which undermines the Constitution in public, in my view, is to support the undercutting of our democracy. But anytime there are judgments, people who, I will say, often are not well informed make comments. I don't begrudge them, but for us lawyers, and the other time I said it on the floor of the House, that as leaders, we must be careful what we say. I've tended to quote Doajo often. He said that I have been here, I have been here, I've been on the right side of the Speaker, I've been on the left side of the Speaker. I've learned that when you are the right side of the Speaker, if you don't watch what you say, you come to the left hand and it will meet you there. If you are the left hand, If you don't what you say, you will come to the right hand and it will meet you there.
It's interesting to hear Joe Ajaho being quoted for the conversation. But does it appear strange to you that under the current circumstances, all NDC MPs appear to be thinking alike, and all MPP MPs appear to be thinking alike with reference to the Supreme Court ruling or the happenings on the floor of Parliament?
It only underlines that we are not talking law, we are talking politics.
And is it a sad reflection of the Parliament we envisage on January 6, 2021?
It's a reflection of the country. It's a reflection of the country. Even in the media, you're divided along party lines. Everywhere, we are divided along party lines. Let's not pretend that it's only in Parliament. Indeed, in Parliament, we actually sit in party lines or caucuses. But outside Parliament, it's even worse. There are churches, there are households where people think in party lines such that brethren don't talk to one another. That is the reality of our situation in the country.
Now, some have been a bit harsh by the interpretations they have put or the twists they have put to what is happening. I spoke to the MP for South Dai, and Roxanne Damaphomakpo's response to the many questions I asked was they were waiting to see how the Supreme Court was going to see its ruling enforced in Parliament. Again, some have also drawn conclusions that the way things are going, if we don't take time, the democracy that we wish to see may become a reflection of a dictatorial regime which will spell doom rather than the positives we pray for.
I've read a publication attributed to Honorable Member for South Dai. I underlined just one portion, and it says that there are constitutional arguments against the Supreme Court's decision. So I was hoping that he would advance those constitutional arguments, but he moved away from there. So I'm yet to hear the constitutional arguments for the point he makes. For example, the Supreme Court is not interested in how Parliament regulates itself. It's not interested. All his job is that you do all what you can, but once you cross the constitutional line, I'll push you back, because that is what power the Constitution has given me. But I wonder why anybody thinks that it will be difficult to implement that. We have cited countries in the Commonwealth which have this practice. At least I have led a delegation of Ghanaian MPs to Westminster. We have observed proceedings. The Speaker votes sitting in his chair. There are three kinds of votes in the House. There's a voice vote, there's a head count, and there's a secret ballot. The voice vote, the Speaker will normally not be interested. He calls the votes ayes or no. But when he declares that the ayes have it or the noes have it, our rule says that anyone who does not agree will get up and challenge them. Mr. Speaker, I challenge your ruling. I wish that we go into a head count or a division. At that point, all ayes get up, they are counted. All noes get up, they are counted. The Speaker says, add my vote to ayes or noes. How difficult is that?
Does that make any moral sense? For example, some are saying, how can you be a referee and still be a player?
Where
you're a lawyer.
Where is the Deputy Speaker a referee? Where is he a referee? Why? Article 92 says, first, if you're not a member of Parliament, you don't qualify.
And you disagree with those saying a referee and a player?
They are misinterpreting the roles of a Deputy Speaker. Article 96 says, if you're not a member of Parliament, first, you cannot be a Deputy Speaker. You must have been sworn in as a member of Parliament. And the Constitution itself says you must come from different political parties. So the Constitution was expecting you to belong to one group or the other. You're part of Team A or Team B. So where does the referee come in?
Would you support a revised standing order which will opt for the election of deputy speakers who are not members of Parliament?
That will not come from a revision of the standing orders. That is in the Constitution. Article 96 provides for standing order. Deputy speakers. There shall be 2 deputy speakers of Parliament who shall be elected by the members of Parliament from among members of parliament, and both of whom shall not be members of the same political party. So first, you must be a member of parliament, and you must belong to party A or party B. The constitution itself was expecting that deputy speakers would be partisan. They belong to a party. What people are confusing, when you're moderating, you're expected to be impartial.
How can you, Joe Osei-Owusu, be impartial, and in this case, for the purpose of this conversation, be on a debate on e-levy when you know that if you have to go and vote, you take sides? You are a human being.
I've been a deputy speaker. This is my 6th year.
Right.
My record is available. On all matters, I belonged to the majority at the time. But whether or not I'm impartial, fortunately, we sit in public. So my rulings, my decisions were in public. I dare anybody to bring evidence that in this or in that matter you were impartial.
Okay, before we go,
you were partial.
Unfortunately, our time, it appears as if as we are wrapping up, the conversation is becoming more interesting because I'm pursuing the controversial issues.
I must emphasize that there's no controversy about the law. What we have is a political controversy. And it is not about the law.
When people want to criticize the Supreme Court judges, especially when the former president says it is surprising that there will be another 7-0 ruling in favor of a position which appears as if there is a mindset. You disagree with him?
I don't know. He didn't say which mindset. As for people expressing their opinions, I have absolutely nothing wrong with it. They are always welcome. But I, Osei-Owusu, will only join in a debate if it is legal. Okay. The things that tickles people's emotions differ. What will tickle my emotion? If you make a legal argument, I want to research it. I want to read the Constitution myself. I want to read the standing order myself. If I agree with you, if I don't agree with you, I'll say so.
Before Joe Osei-Owusu takes leave of us, even though we are in his office, but for the purpose of how we present our program or we leave his office, I want to acknowledge one or two of our sponsors. And when we come back, I'll be asking him what he wants to say about the perceived absence of two key members on the floor, Adwoa Safo and I think the MP for Hunter West or so, who is also indisposed, how this is likely to affect the side of the majority. And then two quick ones he would take away. Upon reflection, what he thinks about the issue about how government or the police must deal with the galamseyers, and of course the Techiman South issue, where he disagreed with those crying for investigations into the incident leading to the death of about 7 or 8 people after the 2020 elections. But let me share with you, if you are looking for Global Women's Business Professional Conference that is coming up, then I want to tell you that it's back. If you want to fast track your career or want to know how to secure financing for business, then I want to share with you where you need to look out for. Now, you have to come prepared, make new friends and partners all over the world, and deepen your knowledge and skills in the life of changing or empowering an impactful way of sharing ideas at this conference. Tickets will be available, exhibition and conference. For those who are interested, we're paying 450 cedis. Those who are going to be at this conference for exhibition only will pay 350 cedis. Those who will be there for conference only as participants will pay 250 cedis. And then if you're a student, you pay 100 cedis. The tickets are available. All you have to do is to send a speed start dial to *713 *33 *72 #. I want to say it again, *713 *33 *72 # or https, that's egotickets.com if you want to chase them online. And all you have to do is to make sure that you show interest for this opportunity, which will be for networking, one-on-one, coaching, mentorship, building, lasting partnership, and so on and so forth. The event is on March 17, 2022 at Accra International Conference Center. It's the Global Women's Business and Professionals Forum. Now, Honorable, I've barely 2 minutes to go. There's the worry that e-levy perhaps is delaying, and even when the speaker is available in Ghana, the majority side is not interested in pushing it because you don't have the numbers. Is that a reality, or
I don't know.
People can still dream?
That's your own interpretation of things and events, but government business is determined by the majority leadership. They determine when to bring what. But what you cannot lose sight of is that the Finance Ministry and the Ministry of Information is going around. They told us something that in the past, we passed the law before we explained to people. Now we realize that that is not catching on well with people. So now they want to hold on, explain to people, and as they go around, people ask questions and they explain. They find that a lot of
buying
people...
time. Just let's be frank.
Buying time from who?
Several opinion polls surveys have suggested that 80% plus of Ghanaians, and I'm sure you are aware, and you have read some of these opinion polls published, are against the e-levy.
Really?
And so what government is doing appears to be cosmetic, or
If,
either buying time to have your numbers in the house.
Well, explaining it to people, the 80%, if it is true. But I'd never, if you come to my constituency and we vote on e-levy, more than 90% will vote for it. More than 90% will vote for it. I don't know where they get their survey figures from. Because the people you talk to are less than 1% of the population. And they are the ones who are freely available and expressing their disapproval.
You are a student of statistics, I guess. If you speak to people at random, and then the probability of those you are speaking to at random are giving you a certain figure, it's a common reflection.
Statistics is like a street lamp pole. You can either use it to guide yourself or use it as a stability pole. Depends on how you use it. Statistics, in my view. When you go to Bekwai constituency and you talk to e-levy, everybody will support it.
I'll go there to, I'll go there to do the opinion
And you see
poll.
the evidence. They see the evidence on the ground of government money working for them.
Ghanaians or government critics did not spare you when you sought to speak your mind on the unfortunate incident which led to the loss of lives in the 2020 elections. And then there was a related comment which had to do with how people who are illegal miners should be dealt with. Upon reflection, do you still stand by that?
In each of those cases, what I said was not what was reported. I find it, I have been expressing it to them. When they come here, I said, I won't talk to you. Because what I say will not be what you report. You use headlines that belie what I said. In my constituency, some young man confronted me with that. I said, no problem. Get the video. Fortunately, one of them had the video, so he put it out. After they all listened, said, oh, but this is not what he said. But hey, I know the media. If I speak to, I make even a mention of it now, they will twist my words and make it a heading different from what I said. But my position was always clear. Don't ask the president to comment when you are not finished investigation. That was all that I was saying. That, is this the appropriate time to make? I said the president did not comment on it. I said, oh, is that the appropriate time? Whatever happened, you have only had a report which is one side. Let the police finish the investigation. When the report comes, and the president will be in a proper position to say who erred, who did what, and sanctions can be applied. So we should not start by making comments when you don't have all the facts. That was the gravamen of my argument.
My guest tonight has been the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament. We've had blunt conversation. We've spoken to issues that ordinarily he wouldn't have loved to stray to those areas because of, but I believe that he has been as frank as possible as far as his opinion is concerned. The debate will continue of the story. I'm sure you've also appreciated some aspects of the issues that may not have been very clear to you. But I believe as we move along as a people, we'll continue to put our searchlight on Parliament, on the executive, on the judiciary, and you as an individual. My name is Eric Ahianyo, and thanks again, Joe Wise, for this privilege to have a conversation with you.
My pleasure, sir.
Bye for now.